Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Happy Friday.
Happy
Ha-
Friday.
Good morning.
All right. We'll start in just a minute. Frank, is this your time to tell us about the great news in mortgages? All right, one moment. So today we're going to talk about.
Sorry about that. Yes.
And shoot, give us an update. I didn't even see what the very predictable market's doing today, but
It's very, very, it's a very predictable market, and everybody should feel very good about it. Actually, it's very unpredictable, which I guess if you've been following the market, it's very unstable. As we know, last Friday was a phenomenal day. Unemployment numbers came out. Bond yields went down to 388, and then all of a sudden Monday hit, and bond yields went way up. So today, consumer price came out below expectations. Producer price came out today below expectations. All signs are looking good except for treasuries. Treasuries are the driving force behind interest rates, and unfortunately, the 10-year yield went up to about 440, 445. So it's putting pressure on rates. The biggest thing that's driving this is just obviously the instability in the markets, the tariffs, and China. China's the biggest. They're one of the biggest holder of bonds. So they're not playing along, and they're going to be selling their bonds. And if they sell their bonds, obviously it's pushing rates up. We could see 5% yields. We could not. So it's just a wait and see game. The biggest thing is if we, any pre-approvals that were done in the last, week, I would have them pre-approved for sure, because the interest rates that went up from a week ago, you're probably looking, and I'm just going to use maybe like a $500 or $400,000 loan amount. You're seeing payments go up anywhere between $300 to $500. So that definitely puts pressure on prices. So if you have your listings and you get pre-approvals that are dated a week ago, just have that re-updated. We're all here in the mortgage industry to validate pre-approvals. I get calls all the time from listing agents asking me if I can validate the pre-approval. I'll call the mortgage company and I'll talk to that loan officer to see when the last time they updated the approval was. So we're here to help you guys if needed. Morgan Stanley came out with their thoughts on the Fed rate cuts, and they're saying that there probably won't be any Fed rate cuts this year. So we'll see. I mean, unfortunately, we're in uncharted territory right now, and rates are going up. Rates are definitely now back into the sevens where they were in the sixes. Even the government loans that were in the high fives are now approaching mid sixes, upper sixes. It just depends, obviously, on credit score. Credit score is the biggest driving factor behind mortgage rates. So a 30-year fixed is in the low sevens, and government loans are, they're still in the sixes, upper sixes, but rates are just all over the place. So just keep an eye on the 10-year, just keep an eye on oil prices. If the 10-year yield drops and oil prices drop, hopefully that'll correlate into lower mortgage rates, but it's been a whirlwind of a week. It's probably one of the craziest weeks. I've been in this business for over 25 years, and it's probably one of the craziest weeks that I've seen. So we're here to help. If there's anything that we can do, just let us know.
All right, thanks, Frank. And Frank is with Motto Mortgage, covering all of our Florida locations.
There you go. Enjoy your weekend.
Yep, thanks. I'm going to talk about proven listing strategies and processes that work. Okay, and I'm going to encourage even some of our veterans who have listing down pat to have an open mind and try to take away a few things from today's Zoom meeting. All right, and I have a lot of notes here. I did a lot of research, and I actually used AI to try to organize it. So, the listing appointment is really, it's like the red zone in football, where you're doing all the work to get in the door to get that opportunity, right? And the championship teams, okay, they do well when they get into the scoring zone, right? And we need to have that same competitive mindset. We need to be able to, be prepared, be creative, and be ready to have your Super Bowl moment, right? From the seller's perspective, when we come out there, we're talking about like liquidating their largest asset. And as I'm listening to some of the speakers talking about this, and I probably took a little bit of a little idea from here, a little idea from there, but there's a lot of brilliant ideas out there that I haven't even thought about. Okay. And one of the speakers talked about when you're selling somebody's house, this is a perspective to give you an idea of how much value you need to generate. Okay. Sometimes sellers, especially if they haven't been there that long, they may have 25, 35% equity in their home, and they're paying you a substantial piece of their equity, okay, to sell their home, right? Because what the bank collects, we're still charging a commission on the total purchase price. So it's something to think about. And, we need to be really useful and communicative in order to win that listing. Okay. And there's an art of connecting with sellers, and the foundation of that connection is to establish credibility and trust through tremendous rapport. Strategies to communicate value effectively, the importance of understanding the seller's goals and pain points and being able to discuss that. One of the podcasts I was listening to talked about when you show up at the house for the listing appointment, what do? Most people, and me included, I've been out with many of you. We get there a few minutes early. You walk down the sidewalk up to the door, maybe a minute or two before you ring the doorbell. And this person said, most sellers, when they have a listing appointment, they're going to be waiting for you. They may have a little bit of anxiety. And he said they're probably looking out the window and watching you come up. And he said, you need to do this. When you go there, you come to the house, you take a couple of steps, you look at the house like that. You make a few notes before you go in there so that they know that you're paying attention. I thought that was a brilliant idea. Anybody else think that's a really good idea, especially if you're on camera? Does anybody do that? Probably not, right? Ron does.
Well,
Awesome.
Mike Ferry says to get that at least 15 minutes before and look at the house on the outside, like you said, with the pen and pad and write down. Yeah, like you said, show that you really care, you really pay attention, and see, the neighbor's house and everything, so that way you can talk to them about it.
Right. So
I do that
it's like
too.
take a little notes, look around, smile, and then walk in, right? So folks, you think this is a listing appointment? Basically this is a highly scripted Broadway production. That's what we're doing, right? We need to be prepared. We need to know all of our lines. We need to do the market research, but it's showtime, it's go time, it's red zone time. Okay. Elevating, let's see, mastering the structure of a high closing presentation. Now, can you imagine if all the talent that we have in this organization, or even just on this call, if we were able to funnel that talent in and take the best ideas, like we would be like probably 101% closing rate, because it would be so good. People would go tell their neighbor, you need to sell the house, on that extra 1%. And the best of the best that I've ever come across, they have one thing in common. Does anybody want to guess what that is? Come on, anybody?
They practice a lot.
Consistency.
They practice a lot. I would say that's probably table stakes to being effective. But let's see, anybody else have one other idea before I kind of tell you what I've observed?
Well, you got to be very
being
prepared.
consistent.
I'm sorry.
Be consistent. Tony, you want to make a guess?
Yeah, consistency, and then you got to be intense. And then you get into the more you know about the neighbor's house. Like yesterday, I went to a listing appointment, and I knew all the homes there in the area because I'm very familiar with that area there. And but I didn't bring it up a house that just went on the market a couple days ago up the street from this one here. And the lady said, you know, that house just came on the market. I said, I know it's right here, but it's not in the same league like yours because I know that house there. The owner is in construction and he totally remodeled the house. And that's why it's for $600,000. So she was very impressed that I knew about the house that she was bringing up.
So Tony, it's gonna be even a deeper level, which is the best of the best are always humble, looking for ideas from other peers, right? They're always like, when they're in a group of peers, they're trying to pick something that will, help them. And they also realize that, you can't expect to get without giving. It's like the law of the universe, right? You have to offer solutions, and then you get more back to make your process a little bit better.
Oh, yes, you got to be always open-minded. Even though I'm in a business for 45 years, I still go to seminars and I still listen to other people. And it's, even though sometimes, you pick up a few nuggets, of course, all the time you pick up, and it's also refreshing. It's a refreshing memory, refreshing your mind. What sometimes, you take for granted, or sometimes you think it's not necessary, or sometimes it's not important. But it is important to other people. So it's great to listen and to listen again. Yes.
And if everybody can take let's just say you take 3 items from today's mastermind, and that you can implement them at the highest level, it's going to be a total game changer for your red zone performance. For when all those things you do, getting reviews, going on social media, making phone calls, whatever you're doing to get opportunities, right? When you get that opportunity, don't you feel like you want to make sure you have your best possible game, right? And if you can extract ideas that can help you add more value to the process, and even redefining, what a listing appointment, what a positive outcome from a listing appointment is. So what's a positive outcome from a listing appointment? And somebody has to say the obvious, and then I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. So what's the positive outcome from a listing
The
appointment?
trail, for me, the trail, even today, like I said, even after 45 years, my trail is they still get the trail they're getting a listing. As long as you get a sellable listing, for me, it's, it's like winning a championship.
I think a
Okay, so-
referral, maybe a referral for a different property or a different client.
Getting the listing, getting a referral.
Sure, all the above.
So I'm going to say that
Learning. I was
Okay.
going to say, Rob, learning something you could do better next time. That's what I always try to do.
Yeah. And Darren, I'm gonna say that, getting the listing, that's probably it's like a binary, yes or no, you got the listing, right? But the quality of the listing is determined by the parameters that are set up and the expectations that you set at that appointment, correct? So
Absolutely.
some of us who maybe don't do all the homework, right? We might buy a listing by misleading a seller that I can sell their house for more. Okay, they may be buying a listing. I don't think there's integrity in that. Another thing that you can accomplish at a listing appointment, right, is setting the optimal price for them to yield the most money from their investment, right? For them to liquidate their home at the best possible execution. Number 2 is set the expectations for the process, right? So that they know what to expect once you launch the listing. Number 3 is to be able to demonstrate and negotiate an effective fee for the service that you're going to provide, right? Because the better your listing conversation is, the higher the perceived value and the larger the fee that you can command when you go there. Does that make sense? So the point of the listing is not to come out with a piece of paper signed. The point of the listing is to communicate the proper strategy, set the right expectations, right? And do all these things that are going to get the outcomes that we talked about earlier, which is, get the referral, correct? The thrill of the win, right? You want to win, but you also don't want to have a headache when you go back to the office or home and say, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into here? These people have unreasonable expectations, or, I wasn't able to charge what I'm worth. Right? These are all things that happen when you don't have the optimal presentation.
So Rob,
In your
so
strategy.
the mindset has to be that you're interviewing them. You're not just getting interviewed. I go to this week. I had 3 listing appointments, and I took all 3. You got to go there with the game plan. That's for sure. But if you go there and you accept getting paid less, that's on you. If you can't negotiate your commission, how can you negotiate an offer coming in for that seller? You need to be able to get exactly what you deserve. You need to be able to be very stern and firm and clear and walk away so you're set up for success. You can't go back to the office stressed. You got to go back knowing that you got the right terms and that you did everything you needed to do. So I get to all of those appointments 30 minutes early. I like to make at least one connection in the neighborhood with a neighbor. You say a name of somebody they recognize, you instantly have this like connection with them. They're like, oh, I've known that Shirley for 30 years since I moved into this neighborhood. And they're like, how do you know her? Well, we just had a great talk. But it instantly gives you that credibility and comfort with them, and brings that energy down. One thing I've said to you before, I always bring an orchid or something if I know I'm meeting the wife, and it just brings the conversation to a place of more peace and relaxed. And then you're building that trust. But I brought one of my agents, Brad, to an appointment. He introduced me to these people, and I like to say that I had to land the plane. They were going to sign with him alone. They signed with us, and he thought maybe we'd get 5%. And I said, no, we're going to get 6%. We're going to get it for a year. And this is how it's got to be. And that's so important.
So Dave, you triggered something that's going to be in the meat of my conversation here, but I want everybody to understand when you're at an appointment, the person in control is the person asking the questions. Okay. If you're telling and selling, you're not in control. Okay. The person asking the questions is in control, right? So David, how long have you owned this property? When you ask the questions, like you've now established yourself.
So I go into that knowing those details. I've looked up that history online. It's all out there for us to see on tax records. You can see when they've acquired that property. By knowing that answer before asking that question, you're armed with more information so that your questions are even more powerful, and there's more depth to the conversation. The best thing is getting a call from the referring agent who introduced me to these people and saying, these people gave great feedback. You were amazing. They're going to sign with you, or I saw you signed. Good luck on the listing. These questions, I think, like everybody that has a problem closing more than 70 or 80% of these appointments, they need to go with other agents in their office and just kind of be a fly on the wall and listen to the people that are winning in our organization, and see what others are doing. I don't think there's anything that can be said that's better than actually seeing what's working for people in today's market, not 20, 30, 40 years ago.
So that kind of leads into the power of the structured approach, right? Because if you're asking questions and you're in control, you should have a structured process. And there's materials, presentation materials. I hate the word presentation, but there's materials that you prepare. There's preparation, right, which gives you confidence and knowledge. And then there's the delivery techniques. To be honest with you, I think the delivery techniques and the communication skills is probably the most important. Now, if you have a stool that only has 2 legs, it's going to topple. So you need to have all of these components in order to be sustainably successful and predictably converting these opportunities. But I think, having the right delivery strategy, delivery techniques it's unmatched. The ability to learn from peers, using proven methods, sharing case studies. So I don't know if Danielle Coyle's on, but one time I ran her numbers before we went on an appointment together, and in her marketplace she was selling listings for 8-point-something% more than the competition. Okay, and if you're asking for a 6% fee or a 5% fee, and you're getting 8% more than the competition, it's basically like they get all of this white glove service and professionalism for less than the benefit that they drive. Okay, so if you're, so Ron Piccolo, you're getting 8.2% more than your competition, and you're charging 6%. You're basically saying, hey, if you sell this on your own, without representation, you're going to get less than the benchmark. So I'm giving you 8.2%, only charging you 6. It's a hell of a deal, right? And that just comes out from the way that you communicate. Overcoming.
On that point there, Robert, there is a report every year that NAR puts out. The about the buyers, sellers.
Yep.
Yeah, and that shows that the for sale by owner usually they lose between 20 to 25%, by selling themselves, So that report is a great report there to show them, so they don't think that you're making up the numbers.
Yep. The best of the best are always refining their scripts, right? Because, the most effective strategies, they do change over time, right? Not the fundamentals don't change, but maybe the strategies change a little bit. You have to have mastery in communication and structuring proposals, pattern-based scripting, develop effective language that moves negotiations forward seamlessly. Okay. I don't know about the majority of the group, but a lot of times, you prepare, you have a lot of great collateral material, you go to maybe a referral of a referral, right? So you want to be overly prepared. You go there, the conversation goes so well, you never crack open all that work that you did. Has anybody been there and done that? Right, you have all this stuff prepared, and the meeting goes so well and so naturally, it just flows.
Many times, yes.
And you never open it up. If you're on camera, raise your hand if you've been in that situation where you've done all that work and you find that you don't need to crack open the stuff that you did.
Oh,
now,
yes, because people, they're so confident about you that sometimes I go there and say, Tony, how much you want to sell this house for? So all the work that I did, it don't matter. Just tell the number and they're happy and you go. Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. So when you've done all that preparation and you have that, shiny little material that you wanted to go through if you needed to, and you didn't need it, do you feel like you wasted your time preparing for that? Anybody feel like, yeah, man, I kind of overstudied, I didn't need to do all that work. Who feels that way? Raise your hand.
No, because that probably helped bring the confidence.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
Better
you have
be
to do
over-prepared.
your research.
Yeah.
So
better
It helps
be
bring the
over-prepared than
confidence.
underprepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either the hurricane nailed it, because what that does is that brings out your confidence because and you did all that work. So now that you're prepared to discuss it at a higher level. So thank you for sharing that. And I didn't see a lot of hands say that they wasted their time preparing, even though you don't share material. Okay.
It goes with the territory. You have to do it.
All right. And on the Mastermind email, there's a link to this document. It's 8 pages long. Okay. I suggest that you download it and read it and highlight the parts that are relevant to you, because there were 4 or 5 people that I respect tremendously that I gathered tidbits from and put it all together. And I think it's, you'll find some really good nuggets there that will help you. Confidence comes from competence. Confidence comes from competence. right?
That's a good one.
If you're
Hey, Rob,
false
if I could
confident,
just interrupt for a minute,
yep,
because this has to do with the point that you just made, does anybody feel like they wasted their time? So just this scenario, if you listen to what David Haller said about meeting a neighbor and establishing a relationship with them, well, let's say that neighbor calls you that afternoon and wants to talk to you. You're prepared for a listening conversation that you had no idea was going to happen.
Robert,
So,
so on Sunday, I had an open house with my agent Brad. We had 30 bodies through the door. Three of the neighbors were all on the market at the wrong price with different agents. Two of them want to list with us. If Brad and I weren't prepared and didn't do the homework that we needed to do to get that listing and to get it priced, the right place, we wouldn't be prepared for those opportunities. Being in the right place, but not being prepared for the opportunity means, it does justice. So I completely agree. I think a lot of people are stuck in what was working before, and now they really need to be prepared for what's working today. In Florida, at least, I think you need to come right under the market number and really be confident on how you deliver that to the seller, because there's going to be a lot of difficult conversations as we go from spring into summer, and you need to be able to get them to price it correctly.
Well, it all comes from the stats. If you know the stats, like you are in Florida, I am in Florida too. And the market in the last 3 months has been really gliding, has not been doing anything. And there are more and more homes. Also, what I prepare is that I give people, show them what has been on the market for more than 30 days. And when you show them that from 6 months ago to now, the numbers have been going up. So I tell them the market is not jumping. So it's not productive to put this house on the market much more than what they sold for, or maybe even below what they sold for. So that way you get some action here. Yes.
I want to find a note that I have here, if I can, real quickly. Which is, yeah, I think if you mastered and understood the process, okay, you're always prepared to present, right? You're always prepared to have a conversation, okay? Because the competence drives confidence. Nobody wants to work with somebody that's not confident, okay? And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, okay? Sometimes, people take it to the wrong degree.
I
Let's
say
see.
confident, not cocky, all the time.
Yeah, so maintaining discipline, confidence, and conviction in every interaction, okay? So here, traditional listing presentations rely on terminology that's been used for over 200 years. Okay, that's what they're still teaching you in the traditional model. The term listing, comes from putting it on a bulletin board, right? I think it's time that we kind of, redefine a listing presentation to a sales opportunity. And instead of calling it a listing, let's try calling it a customized marketing proposal or something to that kind. Okay. Shifting the mindset. Okay. Seller expectations, I don't know who mentioned the NAR profile of home buyers and sellers, but that's a really good. That was Tony.
It's right here. It's called profile of a home buyers and sellers. And this one I have in front of me here, it's from the 23. So I think 24 should be out now. That should be out. So it's a very good piece of paper to show to people so they don't think that you're making up numbers, like I said.
Where
Right,
do you
so-
find that, by the way? I'm sorry, I think I missed where to get that.
You can get it from the NAR site, or you can
Yeah, either NAR website or you can just Google and it comes right up.
yeah. So if you have trouble, ask your local leadership, or you can even reach out to myself. I'll share with you how to get it.
Okay,
Seller expectations, okay? Clients are not looking for like a generic canned listing presentation. Okay, they want a customized, clear strategy for marketing their individual home. Okay, the terminology that we use needs to evolve, right? A lot of times, without thinking, we use industry terms. Okay, instead of listing, position the process as a marketing proposal tailored to their needs. Okay, learn from peers, incorporate advanced scripting and persuasive communication skills into the process, right? Incorporate advanced scripting techniques and persuasive communication into the process. And persuasive communication is not arguing, it's not debating. In my opinion, persuasive communication is asking the right questions that help the client discover the process that's right for them, right? And I think education-based data also helps you. Okay, if you share with them, every potential seller should know the impact that days on market has on the ultimate sales price. Every prospective seller should know that racking up days on market directly impacts the ultimate sales price. And if you do the research, you'll see that it's virtually undeniable. The 4 Ps of winning a listing presentation, preparation, presentation, persuasion, performance. I think somebody talked about, having a winning mindset. And you can only have a winning mindset if you have the confidence from having done the preparation. And I think in the industry, a lot of times we have highly skilled, highly talented individuals in the information and the processes of which they're selling property. But where they really need to improve is having a more consistent process for the red zone, right? Where you convert that listing, where you determine how much you're getting paid, right? Where you determine what the price is going to be for that property. So the red zone is where the money is made. Most of us, understand the marketplace and probably know where that property should be launched onto the market. But having the skills to be able to present and defend the pricing and the fees that we charge is next level. Okay. Qualitative and quantitative preparation. Quantitative, researching property details, ownership history, tax records, and all of that information. Qualitative is, getting the right mindset, being able to build the rapport, establishing trust and positive energy throughout the engagement. Somewhere on this sheet, it says, people want to hire people who like them. Okay, and it's not people want to hire people who are like them, okay? It's people want to hire people who like them. Okay, people want to hire people to sell their house if they believe you like their house. Okay, so we need to, we need to have integrity in being able to, share with our clients that, we like and love their property. We like them. We want to help them. Somebody had a comment?
No, it's short, yeah, because sometimes the people see that you're not so crazy about their homes and you think you are being a negative. Oh, this guy's not going to sell my house because it's not, I don't like your house. It's just that the house needs, a lot of attention. So you still got to be excited. You're right.
Yep. when you go to a homeowner to have a discussion about selling their property, this was an aha moment for me. Okay. You are the presentation. Okay. You don't walk through a presentation. You're the show. Okay. You don't have a crutch with handouts. You don't have you might want to have that as support to build your confidence, and when necessary, bring it out. And part of our process might be using data to support the pricing and the fees that we charge. But guess what? We are the show. We're the presentation. And if you don't like the presentation that you have, let's up our skills. Okay. Let's take it to the next level. Study, strategic data points, and some of these things might be things that many of you do. But I think even things like, hey, being, 2.5 miles from, 3 major highways is a real value for being here. It takes about 25 minutes to get to, downtown Fort Lauderdale. When we launch your property, these are things that we're going to highlight. First impressions, okay. I talked about even before you walk up to the door, the Broadway play starts then, right? You want to assume that you're on camera and that they're watching you and they're drawing an impression about the way that you walk up to their house. Your expertise, your approach, and your ability to instill confidence is what helps you win in the red zone. Now, I'm going to try to find, and this is a borrowed technique, but I'm going to share this with you at this point. If you're walking through a house and having the owners point out to you what they've done and the features they love, this happens because you prime them by looking for the distinct marketing features that can help drive their market value up. Okay, so you might want to use some of those terms. Like, hey, can you walk me through the house and share with me from your perspective what the distinctive marketing features are that are going to help me drive the value up of your home, right? And it has to be words that you're comfortable with. You might be able to massage that to your language. Okay, a key lesson is anytime someone highlights something impressive in the house, whether it's an updated kitchen, a new appliance, or fresh paint, okay, you should pause and ask. If it's 2 sellers, like I would say most of the time it is, Mr. Garber, whose idea was that to put the new kitchen in?
My wife, undoubtedly.
No, it was your wife's idea. And then you can turn to, I would turn to Robert and say, that was a brilliant decision that your wife made. When you decided to put the new kitchen in, were you looking for making the house more livable, or did you have resale value in mind?
We did it for us. We didn't do it for resale value.
Okay, so things like this keep the conversation going favorably, but you know what else that does? Right, if I say to Robert, your wife made a great decision by putting that kitchen in. I think if you believe that it wasn't a green kitchen with stupid things, you have to be authentic. But that basically builds trust, and your wife is going to be like, "Wow, I like that guy," So there are some little things that you can use to help the process. And keep in mind, it's not a binary outcome, right? Because you can get a listing and it's not at the optimal price. And that means that there's a lot more work that's gonna happen. And if you're in a transitioning market, you know, in Florida, you know, what percentage of listings don't sell it in this time? Anybody wanna give me a guess? I'm not saying yours, but what percentage of listings in Florida ultimately don't sell?
50%.
50%? Anybody, or Florida team, Sandra, what percentage of listings don't sell in your community, Sandra Verbeck?
25.
I'd say it's probably like 40%.
40%.
Yeah, I'd say 35 to 40%, but it just depends. what
I'd
they're
say
priced.
60%, 60 to 70%.
So we have, we have 35 to 65 or 70%. Eric Pruitt, what do you say?
20%,
Is that you or the overall market?
the overall market,
Okay.
95%.
I would say if you factor condos in, you're probably gonna see that being quite higher, 25%. You know, if you get a property that's priced right and you have a relationship with the seller, you establish a timeline and set expectations, you've done all the things, you know, appropriately, that you're at the closing, seller is listening to what needs to be done to sell it. Eric's not on camera. So anybody else, if you get somebody that follows the strategy,
What was that?
I'm sorry?
Were you talking to me?
Yeah, I was saying if you have a seller that's going to Eric and saying, I'll do whatever it takes, Eric, you want me to list my $1 million house at 400, I'll do it. If they're listening to whatever you tell them it takes to get it done, you're gonna sell like 98, 99% of those listings, correct?
Correct.
And you might get a complaint like Eric's got. If anybody has any listing referrals, you know, Eric's got the most unique complaint that I've ever heard. Said he sold a house for too much money. And there's a little story behind that, but anyway. So walking out from a house with a signed listing does not mean that you are successful, unless you establish the right price for your services, the right fee, and you got the right expectations and the timeline and the path to getting it done completely. Okay. And I think true professionals, when the market goes to a 75% or a 50% success rate in the industry, okay, there's separation season for you to establish that you are, in fact, different from what service somebody else provides. Because sometimes the public's perception is you just put it in the MLS and on Zillow. Do you think without an effective listing appointment, without an effective conversation, that the public might think that all we do is put it on the MLS and Zillow and then it sells itself?
They still do.
They still do. So it's our job during that appointment to separate us from the competition and to identify what unique value that's not easily duplicated that we have.
Rob, did you touch on the advantage that Zillow's given us today?
About not syndicating unlisted properties, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I read the headlines. Anybody more familiar with, and that's taking effect, what, in 2 weeks, Eric, or immediately?
What is that?
In May. So did anybody read through that entire article or change? Or I know, Eric, you probably have more information than most if you want to share that.
Please.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
hear
you
you.
can hear you.
Hey, Dorian, give me that article I dropped out for Zillow, please, real quick.
What?
The article I got put in my listing.
All right, well, Eric,
basically, we've been noticing in our market some of the thing I gave you this morning, the Zillow thing. We've been noticing some of the agents telling people they don't want to go on the MLS, that it's better to go with our private office network like Compass and Douglas Elliman, and some of these companies are telling them they have all the buyers and don't want to go on MLS because we can test the market with our private MLS and it doesn't get recorded on Zillow or the MLS. So people don't know that you tried $2 million, but we're down to $1 million, and you go to the active market on $1 million. So their spiel is we're going to use our private MLS, and then we'll try coming soon. Then we'll put on MLS. But during that time that we're just exposing it to Compass agents, for example, and they get to double dip them, that won't be recorded on MLS. So if you want to try a little higher, we can do that. Where if you go with Remax, for example, they have to put it, they're going to put it in the MLS within 24 hours, and they'll know you tried to get 2 million, and now you're down to 1.5 million, which means you're going to really get a low ball offer. With us, you won't, because no one knows about it. So Zillow shouldn't have had to do this. NAR should have done this. So NAR changed their clear cooperation policy a week or two ago. Is that what was about a couple of weeks ago, Rob?
Yep.
And it came up with what's called a delayed marketing exempt listing, which means Compass or Douglas Elliman, they can have the seller sign a form saying they don't have to submit it to the MLS right off the bat, and they don't have to cooperate with other agents. They can use their private network to find the buyers. And so Zillow, getting 7% of their revenue from referrals.
Before you tap into Zillow, I think are forced to allow that. It was something that they were not, that they were kind of fighting because they kind of, well, not they kind of, they knew that there would be abuses associated with that. And ironically, let's take the Zillow perspective now.
Okay. Zillow is drawing a hard line on listing transparency. Beginning in May, the country's largest real estate portal will permanently prohibit listings from appearing on its sites unless they are added to the MLS within 24 hours of being publicly marketed. The move, which aligns with clear cooperation policies, comes as brokers rush to launch their own private listing networks in response to NAR's new delayed marketing exempt listing policy. Meanwhile, Douglas Elliman and Corcoran are among the latest brokerages to launch private listing networks, part of their broader shift as the industry adapts to NAR's revised policies. So I think it's a real win for all of us that actually are looking out for the seller's best interest and believe there's only one way to get the highest possible price for a property, and that's to expose it to as many people as possible. And there's no way by limiting your exposure just to Corcoran or Compass or Remax's private MLS system are they exposing it to the max amount of people.
Or I think that restores integrity to the process.
Very self-serving, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because I had a past client, a doctor here in the area, so he's not the dummy there, but he was asking me about property if I marketed property off the market, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, how is that going to help you? That I asked that. I said, the more buyers know about your home, the better price you're going to get. So thank you for sharing this. Now I know where they're getting the idea. Yeah, because.
But it's like Rob says, just, meet the people. Andrew Lacey, coach that I coach with, he says, STP, see the people. And I went out and talked to a person who's thinking about selling a house on the Intercoastal. And they said to me, no, we don't want to put on MLS. Ex-real estate agent from Douglas Elliman told me they can prove to me how they're going to sell it themselves, and you're not going to have 1,000 people coming through your house who can't even qualify to buy it. We have all the qualified buyers. I said, oh, that's hogwash. And then I pulled up the agent's numbers, and he had 4 houses on the water on the Intercoastal he sold, he double dipped every one of them. And I was scratching my head. How the hell is he doing this? And one of them was like an $18 million buyer, or $12 million buyer, or $5 million buyer. How is he getting that? Then, so when you have an extra minute, just go to Chat GTP and ask, what is Compass's real estate's marketing plan? It tells you this. It tells you that they send it first to their private network. Then if that doesn't work, they'll put it into coming soon. Then if that doesn't work, they'll go to MLS.
Guys, so
So-
very close to Compass, I know them very well. I was going to be the first agent in Compass, Florida. My ex-girlfriend was the broker of record for the state. They've been doing this for a long time. So it's called phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. Coming soon, let's see, it equates for 6% of Compass's sales. 94% still go and co-broke on every deal. 94%. So it's only 6%. Most of the time, this is something that's very popular, like on Palm Beach Island, in Naples, in the Hamptons, in Aspen and Vail, and the very ultra high-end, ultra luxury market for the most part.
So I think it's really important for everyone to know the basis of the changes with NAR, and that is that, of course, there is litigation, that was starting to come forward, and this is how NAR has decided to address it, to try to do something in the middle of what exists. And most of the MLSs, or all of the MLSs, have actually until September to implement whatever policy they choose to implement on this. And even in the North, in New Jersey here, we have differences in our MLSs, how they're already handling it. So we'll see how it all unfolds. But what my concern is, I don't want to deprive our agents of having an opportunity that's being offered by another company. And I am a firm believer in the MLS as a director on an MLS, that the best way to market a home and get the best price for the seller and your client is to put it on the MLS. But then we have the other side of the coin where we have to consider what our agents are facing, so still a lot to be determined on this. I don't believe exclusivity is the way to go. But really, this all came out of potential litigation going on and their reaction to it at NAR.
Thank you. I'm just going to go through a few more high-level topics that I wanted to hit, which is, when you're at the appointment, okay, there's a timeline for a successful home, okay, and it's not the 3-step plan. On Saturday, put a sign in the ground, put it in the MLS, and then pray for a successful sale. I think most of us agree that you want to launch that listing and build up a little bit of demand so that when it hits the market, are most of us putting listings on like a Tuesday through Thursday? Is that like what most of us are doing? Yay, nay, or it doesn't matter? What's your thoughts?
Friday afternoon.
Thursday.
If you're trying
I like
to sell,
Thursdays.
if you're trying to sell a listing without MLS, it doesn't go on Zillow. It doesn't go on all the other websites. It's just depending on that one realtor or the agency to bring the buyers to it. So there's more exposure when it is on the MLS. So Eric, I don't know how that guy double dipped 4 properties. That's pretty amazing.
I agree.
But it was probably at the detriment, or almost definitely at the detriment of his selling clients. So establishing a successful timeline, or having a timeline for a successful home listing launch. Set a photography date. If you're using video, explain the impact of video and perhaps lifestyle stories. If you're using video, that you could showcase a lot of the features and compelling visuals to help make an emotional connection. Sellers contribute insight into what they we're attracted to and love about the community and the home. You know, how about even talking about a buyer profile and target marketing? Okay, and some of the target marketing might be non-traditional, right? So for example, if you know a lot of the buyers are coming from the Northeast, maybe you want to promote it up in the Northeast if you're in Florida. Maybe if you're a digital expert, or if you even understand how to promote it digitally, you might be able to say, hey, you know, the ideal buyer for this type of home, a 5-bedroom, 3-bath over here is probably a 26, 35-year-old, if that's, you know, what's most predominantly making the purchases, and you try to target them electronically. There are specific ways to do that. A pre-marketing or a pre-launch for the listing to go on. Okay. Maybe you know, those of you who launch it on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, do you put it on as a coming soon until your first open house? Anybody want to contribute what you're doing in your market?
So Rob, back when companies were doing caravans, with the agents going out and looking at new listings, and in some cases they still are, I always tried to time my new listings to the day that the caravans took place in that town. And I found that that way I got, you know, good exposure to other agents who became my salespeople.
Okay, great. I want to talk about what the conversation looks like, and this is going to be a really controversial subject, is when you take your listing, okay, are you going and saying, okay, while I'm sitting here with you, Mr. Garver, we're going to decide how much my compensation is. We're also going to decide what we offer a co-op agent when they bring us a client. So Robert, are you in the camp where you're saying, hey, we're going to establish that we're going to pay out 2.5%, 3% to a co-op agent when you take that listing?
I think it's part of the discussion that it's a possibility that we're going to have to give out money to the buyer's agent. But you know, going back to the conversation we had last Friday's mastermind, you know, I kind of like the idea of let's see what they ask for and make a decision at that point. But I would certainly let the seller be aware that that would be a question that would have to be addressed at some point.
Yeah, you don't want to mislead them and say, hey, the total fee is 2.5%, 3.5%, which I think some of the industry might be doing. But I do think that, in my opinion, is just one person's opinion, is giving the seller the option to entertain the entire package as opposed to prescribing a compensation and assuming that every buyer's agent's asking or looking for the same compensation is probably a financial misstep, in my opinion. You know, the common goal is to, you know, have a successful launch, to secure offers within 2 weeks to 30 days, or a week to 30 days, right? We talked about, you know, one of our agents selling properties for 8.2% more than their peer group. That's social proof of marketing success. Leveraging your own data is incredibly important. You know, focus on achieving optimal or favorable pricing and minimizing concessions. Modern marketing strategies ensure maximum exposure and maximum demand generation. Strong negotiation and strategic execution increase the home value and minimize the risk. You know, getting this launch correctly really does limit the risk. It doesn't eliminate it, but limits the risk of a failed launch. Coaching buyers, agents, you know, all these things that I don't think sellers realize, and I don't think buyers realize it either, but who you choose has a dramatic impact on the outcome, right? The belief systems that we all have about how to get stuff done, setting the right expectations for both sides of the transaction, guiding conversations to secure better outcomes, higher sales for sellers. It's said by one of the quote unquote experts, half of the negotiation is about influencing buyer's agents to encourage strong price offers and favorable terms. I don't know if it's half, but there's definitely credibility to that statement. I hope that everybody picked up a few ideas, and there's 8 pages if you want to read through it, and I think you'll pick up at least 3 things that you can add to your repertoire when you go on an appointment to secure a listing. And if this is the one thing that you take away from today, is a signed listing is not a signed listing in every case. Having the right expectations and the mindset from the seller, the proper price, is equally as important to getting the listing signed, and the proper compensation, right? Because we all deliver different levels of service. You need to determine what the value of your service is and what your compensation will be, and you need to be able to communicate and defend it. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you get 3 things that you can change in your listing appointments to wind up with a better outcome. All right. Any questions from anybody? Well, I'll stay on for a few extra minutes, but anybody have any questions?
I was just going to ask you, or everybody else too, what would be the benefit to the seller if they have all these small off the market properties? What is the benefit? What is the advantage? I don't understand.
So the argument is, Tony, we get to test the market without accumulating days on market on the public sites or the MLS. That's the argument, and I think it's for self-serving belief.
Tony, there's some data on the chat that I put in from ChatGPT that explains the reasons why Compass thinks this 3-phase approach is beneficial, but mostly beneficial to them, yeah.
And the other thing is that same thing with coming soon. Why this is coming up? I mean, if the house is for sale, it's for sale. If it's not for sale, what is this coming soon all about?
So I think that a limited coming soon is kind of like when you pre-sell concert tickets, right? They want to say the show sold out in 9 minutes, right? But the only reason why the show sold out in 9 minutes is because they pre-marketed it, right? So when they turned the button up and said, hey, we're now selling tickets, there's an excitement, there's a frenzy. It's like an auction, right? Everybody wants to log on immediately and get the best seats and consequently pay a high price. So that's why I think that the coming soon, if used correctly, does have some inherent value. Anybody else have any questions? Maybe your peer group. If nobody else has any questions, I want to ask Sandra, how's your research going on your new target market?
I've completed my research. I took a look at several components. So one is what is my sphere strength, which I was in New York for 28 years. So I think I have influence with that crowd. So I thought about those people who are coming to West Palm Beach and where are they going? So I took a look at the activity primarily downtown West Palm Beach, which is where new wealth management companies, a lot of the financial group are still moving to this Wall Street South. And then I identified in that subsection which buildings were having the most activity. And I looked at 1 year back and also just in 2025. So I identified 3 buildings that have had the most activity in terms of closings in a soft market. So there has to be, without knowing the building, there has to be some desirability there that those buildings are selling at a better rate than other condo associations. So I'm ready with my strategy of where I'm going. And then I also looked at what were the expired opportunities, what were the price points in those areas. So I'm in learning phase of where I'm going to march.
So just to give a little bit of context, Sandra wanted to improve her average sale price. And what's the average sale price in the areas that you're investigating?
Between 5 and 800,000. And then there are some outliers, 1.7, 2.3, because there's penthouses involved, but mainstream in these buildings is between 5 to 800,000.
That's probably double what your average sale price currently is, or close to it.
That's about 7 times, well, no, 5 times, because I'm sending, my average sale right now is like 160.
Okay, and in your target that you have now, or your inherited market, the values have dropped by close to 50%.
I wouldn't say 50, but definitely 30 to 40, and it'll depend. There are some areas in the community I farm now that are holding their values for very specific reasons. Proximity to a synagogue is one of the most important drivers, and those are mostly New York religious buyers who, there are a few neighborhoods that are maintaining their values, so those are probably down 10 to 15%. And then the non-desired areas, those are dropping at, 30, 40, not quite 50, but definitely 40%.
So, yeah, I mean, this is fun. You control where you do your business. You can be intentional about redefining a new market. Look at 2 or 3, find out where there's not a dominant player, so that you're able to infiltrate that market much quicker. And look at the turnover statistics, and find out where you could be. So, and I hope, this group here, drive some value for this. And I also want to say that over the past week, I heard 3 people who made referrals between, our 4 states that we work in, because they met somebody on a mastermind, and they spoke, and they're like, wow, I like that person. And I don't know, I think we had a closing yesterday or maybe today with Mike Gopi in Kenya from Franklin Lakes. So above getting more information, hopefully you build some relationships here that will drive some business to you in the future. There's no other questions. Everybody have a fantastic weekend, and thanks for sharing, and thanks for showing up. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Rob.
Thank you, Rob.